says that allegedly you had asked Mr. Linnell to meet with the unions in order to obtain information of wrongdoing from the unions against the executives. Your comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. I think in the discourse that took place at the beginning of the meeting where we're talking about the alleged misdemeanors, one of the issues that arose there was what actually took place at Eskom in regards to Mr. Matela Gogo in particular. And what I had stated there was that not only did I ask Mr. Matela Gogo himself directly about the allegation, I also asked the chief executive in regard to this allegation. And Mr. Matela Gogo did not deny anything to do with that, and Mr. Matuna, the chief executive, did not have an explanation or a report to the effect of what transpired. And the unions came in because there was then an allegation.
This is when? Let's get the time right. Are we talking about what happened around the 11th of March, after that, or much earlier?
The incidents that I'm recounting now? No, Chairman, this happened the previous year, sometime in 2014. 14, yes.
And Mr. Selega, is your understanding that the board member who said that was talking about things that happened before March 2015, or is it not clear?
No, my understanding is that Ms. Feroshni Naidu is talking about the time when Mr. Nick Linnell was engaged in March 2015. Unless if you are answering a broader issue, which is not directly related to the unions.
So I think what Mr. Selega says is that Ms. Naidu said something to the effect that you made arrangements, or you had a role to play in terms of which Mr. Linnell was going to obtain information from trade unions about allegations of misdemeanors by the executives.
Correct.
Do you know anything along those lines?
No, Chairman, I did not play any part in Linnell, Mr. Linnell getting any information from the union. No.
Do you know whether he ever obtained such information from unions, or is that something you don't know?
I don't know, Chairman. I couldn't say. I don't know.
Could she be mistaken and confusing some other event with this, which might be similar? Could she be talking about a different time? But if she was talking about the previous year, Mr. Linnell was not there, was not involved in Eskom before 2015, isn't it?
I think she is, well, she's certainly talking about the incidents of that period when Linnell was not there.
Yes.
But for some reason, it would appear as if she gets the impression that I informed Linnell that he can talk to the unions if he wants to know about misdemeanors that occurred at Eskom. And I'm saying that is not the case.
You say that you didn't do that?
No.
Okay, Mr. Slegger?
Yes. To the allegations that Mr. Koko has made or the version that he has made about you seeking to get rid of him, you have set out a response in your affidavit to the element of you intending to get him suspended. Would you quickly relate that to the chairperson, your version as a response to this allegation of Mr. Koko against you?
You have already said part of it when you talked about where the allegations of misdemeanors came from.
Yes.
But I think Mr. Selega wants you to give evidence with regard to the other parts which are in your affidavit, which you haven't dealt with. Why you say Mr. Koko's evidence that you wanted him suspended because of disagreements between you and him regarding the suspension of Mr. Sikasimbe, why you say that has no validity.
Yes. Well, let me first of all deal with the issue of the allegation that I suspended him because of Mr. Sikasimbe. Chairman, there is an affidavit which has been deposed by Mr. Matuna. If you recall, Mr. Machela made some allegations, Mr. Koko made an allegation that Mr. Matuna had said to him that I had spoken to Mr. Matuna and told Mr. Matuna that if Mr. Koko does not unsuspend Mr. Sikasimbe, I will in turn suspend both him and Mr. Koko. Mr. Matuna has then responded and categorically denied that I had ever said anything like that to him. And incidentally, where Mr. Machela Gogo deals with Mr. Matuna having shown him evidence of
SMSs
SMSs.
or WhatsApp messages. I'm not
That's
sure. I
right.
think SMSs, yeah.
where I'm supposedly complaining to him about and talking about suspending Mr. Machela. He denies that as well. So that I think is essentially the first clarity that I'd like to put on this issue. There is also, Chairman, this whole idea that Mr. Koko has, that he and I have had an antagonistic relationship. And I just decided here, Chairman, to reflect a bit on my experience vis-a-vis him at Eskom and try to understand where this might either manifest itself or where it emanates from, or whether in fact there's been any clear indication that this has been happening. To that extent, I've recalled, Chairman, that I had a lot to do with Mr. Machela's promotion, Mr. Koko's promotion. Mr. Koko was the first time I had anything to do with it was during Mr. Brian Damas's time. And Mr. Damas wanted someone to act in the position of group executive for technology and engineering, as it was called at the time, which is now commercial, technology and commercial. And Mr. Koko was the candidate who was most likely and was closest to that position because he was already a divisional executive in technology. And when I mentioned Mr. Koko to him, he categorically stated to me that he does not believe that Mr. Koko is ready to assume that responsibility. So he is not going to support that. So it did not happen during Mr. Damas's time. It then happened soon after Mr. Damas had left and Mr. Machila was then acting. And the motivation went to the People and Governance Committee, of which I was sitting, and I remember very clearly having supported that promotion. Mr. Machela Koko came to me and he thanked me for it. And then fast forward now, several months later, this is now when Mr. Matuna had just become chief executive at the beginning of October. And in November, Mr. Machela came to me, Mr. Koko came to me and said to me, will I support his promotion into that position as a substantive group executive? And I said yes. And Mr. Matuna, obviously, Mr. Machela Koko came to me unofficially, obviously. But Mr. Matuna, as chief executive, came to me formally to say he is going to make this proposal, and would I support the proposal in the committee? I said to him, yes, I would support it. And indeed, that's what happened. And once again, Mr. Koko came and thanked me for it. This incidentally happens quite some few months after this so-called, of this incident of Sumitomo together with Mr. Sikasimbi. So when I put the totality of these things together, Chairman, I say to myself, I think Mr. Machela is very disingenuous by alluding to some, conflict or something between us. I think this is designed to achieve whatever his intentions are. I think he wants to polarize the situation so that it becomes clear that I am pursuing him on the basis of a personal vendetta, which is not the case.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Slega.
You are done, Mr.
Yes.
Tsotsi. Anything further you wish to say on averment of misdemeanors before I move on? Either made by other board members?
Chair, I might recall something as we go along.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's all right. Let's deal with, look briefly at the reasons why, because the reasons why the board members then decide to have you removed from your position as a chairperson of the board. Because this is linked to the turn of events on the 11th of March, the suspension of the executives, and 8 days later, which is on the 19th of March, you have a meeting. In this meeting, the board members are opening up to you about their displeasure with what they say is your conduct. In the conduct on the basis of which they decided to take the decisions to suspend the executives. And you are being, for lack of a better word, accused or singled out, let me use that word. You are singled out as the person who caused the board to make this decision. One of which is that there was a report from the Presidency, which you didn't produce, the engagement of Mr. Linnell, and the terms of reference. And you may want to take the chairperson step by step in dealing with those aspects, particularly...
I think it might be better if you put them step by step to him.
If I put them step by step.
I think let's start with this one. One of the things that the board members who have given evidence here have said as to why they say they lost confidence in you is that they said that you said either on the 11th of March or on the 9th of March or both on the 9th and the 11th of March in those meetings that one, Mr. Linnell had been appointed by the Presidency to assist Eskom, I think, and that he had been involved, he had done quite a lot of work already, and that there was a report that, as I understand it, that you must have been implying was in the Presidency, which was relevant to the inquiry that was being discussed, that was being proposed. As I understand the evidence of these board members, you referred to the existence of such a report as indicating that that report shows that there was a need for this kind of inquiry. That's my understanding of what they are saying. But they say you were being untruthful because later on you did, either you couldn't produce the report or you did admit that there was no such a report. Correct. Or something to that effect.
Yes. Yes, that's correct, that he admitted.
So that's what they have said. Did you ever say Mr. Linnell had been doing a lot of work or had been appointed by the Presidency to assist Eskom in regard to the inquiry? So we'll take them step by step.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, Chairman, in respect of the first question you asked, yes, I did tell the board that Mr. Linnell had been asked by the President to assist us.
Yes.
On this inquiry.
Yes.
Mr. Linnell himself made that exact statement in a meeting where board members were present.
Yes.
I would have to find it somewhere. I did actually quote that statement.
In your affidavit?
It is somewhere in my affidavit, I believe, where he states categorically, where I say he has in fact been doing a substantial amount of work in preparation for this.
Yes.
So board members knew that Mr. Linnell had been tasked to assist, and he had been the one who had done all the work. In fact, I can quote to you what I said in that meeting. What page? This would be page 1237, Chairman, in my affidavit. 1237? 1237, yes. Okay. I've got that page. Yes. I put it to the board that Nick, this is now 26.2. I say to the board, Nick, can I put this straight? Nick was asked to do this exercise, and he had to do a lot of background work because of the instruction he got to do the exercise. Now, what is left is for him to be commissioned formally by Eskom to get into the teeth of what needs to be done. So he has been on board on this for quite a while. I think he's having difficulty trying to say that. So, but yes. So, Chairman, from the standpoint of board members understanding where Nick came from and that he had been engaged in this matter for some time in terms of background work, was very clear. What was the basis for saying he had been appointed by the Presidency?
What did you base that on?
Chairman, I based it on a very clear indication by the President. When the President said, this gentleman will assist the board.
Is that at the meeting of the 8th?
At the meeting of the 8th, the President very, very clearly said, this gentleman will assist.
The board?
Yes.
Okay.
And that he would then help the board in getting this inquiry going.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that something you did say before, that the President said this gentleman will assist the board?
I'm not sure, Chairman. For all the statements I've made, I would have to check.
Yeah.
I don't quite recall.
Mr. Selega?
Yeah.
Any recollection?
I don't recall in those words, but I know from Mr. Nick himself, I hope I'm not muddying the waters. Mr. Nick himself had said when he went to Pretoria, the first meeting,
Yeah.
Ms.
He was told
Dudumieni,
by Ms. Mieni that
you are the right
president, he was supposed to meet the president,
Yes.
and he may have said, Mr. Dudumieni said, the president wanted him to conduct the inquiry, or something like that.
Ms. Mieni said she had recommended him to the president
Yes,
as the right person to do the inquiry.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay,
Yeah, I'm not sure whether Mr. Tsotsi had put it in the way he's doing it now,
yeah,
but I know that I've picked it up from the transcript, that
Yeah.
he has told the board that Mr. Linnell has been given to us by the presidency.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, okay. So, but as far as you recall, you did say something to that effect, that he was appointed by the presidency, or he was being given to Eskom by the presidency.
Yes.
Yes, and you say you said that because of the fact that the President Zuma had said this gentleman will assist the board.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the question of, you say that he has been on board on this for quite a while. Was that correct?
This is what Nick told the board himself,
Yes.
separately.
Yes.
There is-
But as I understand it, his evidence is that he was called to Mashamandlovu on the 6th of March.
Correct.
He effectively was asked to drop everything and left Cape Town and flew to Pretoria. He was called by Ms. Dudumieni, and they had a discussion about Eskom, and Ms. Dudumieni said she had recommended him to the president. So on the evidence that is known to us, he would not have started to do anything prior to the 6th of March. It doesn't appear to me that that qualifies as he has been doing some work for a while.
Chairman, if we look at the transcript where Ms. Naidu is asking him a question in regards to whether he's doing this because he's looking to earn some money or something to that effect, he then elaborates in answer to that question about this very same issue, where he says he spent some time working on this issue of the inquiry. Now, nobody asked him on the board, about time frames. How long has this been? So my statement is really based on what Nick had said in the very same meeting that I addressed this issue. I can't recall exactly what page, where exactly in the transcript we can find this, but there's definitely a point that Nick himself makes.
You see, what comes across, at least the impression I get from the evidence of the board members who spoke on this, testified on this, the impression I get is that you referred to the existence of a report, and is that the reason why you referred to the existence of a report that they say did not exist, and that you said Mr. Linnell had been appointed by the presidency, and that you said he had been doing some work relevant to the inquiry for quite some time, all because you were seeking to persuade them to agree to the establishment of an inquiry, I think, and the suspension of the executives. But it may be that I'm wrong about the suspension of the executive, but certainly in terms of the inquiry, that you were referring all of these things to say to them, this thing is credible, or this thing of an inquiry, if you make the decision to go ahead, it's something worthwhile. That's the impression I get, that you are pushing, that's what they are saying.
Chairman, you will recall what I had said in my testimony earlier. Can't remember exactly which time. That I had said that I myself had such an intention, even during the previous
You
war,
did say, yeah.
that I thought there is need for an inquiry. So, without a doubt, I was convinced, and hopefully I convinced them that there is a need to do an inquiry into the Eskom's affairs, and it's urgent because of the situation the Eskom was facing at the time. So if they understood me to say I am doing my best to impression upon them that there's need for this inquiry and it should be done, they are correct.
You have no quarrel with that?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's important. Let's go back to where I said I may be wrong, namely that they seem to be saying you were pushing for the establishment of an inquiry and the suspension of the executives. I said I may be wrong that they were saying that in relation to the suspension of the executives as well. But you are in a position to say whether at that stage you were pushing for both or not, the suspension and the establishment of the inquiry, or the only thing you were really pushing for was the inquiry, but the issue of the suspension, you were not really pushing, but you would go along if that was the decision.
Chairman, what I said to the board members, and that is that the inquiry requires that those people who are heading the areas that have to be looked into should not be in their positions when this inquiry takes place. So they should, in fact, I never talked about suspensions, interestingly enough. I talked about step aside.
Yes, no. I'm just saying suspensions simply
Yes.
because at some stage in the past, either with you or with other members, we came to agreement that let's stop saying suspension or step aside or special leave, because we know what we're talking about, whether you call step aside or special leave or suspension. The fact is you are not going to be at work, but you are not dismissed.
Right.
Yeah, so you might have used the term step aside, but basically we talk about the same thing.
So, Chairman, the consistency of it is quite clear from my mind. Support the inquiry, support the stepping aside of the executives, and that stepping aside is not as a result of them having done something
Something wrong, yeah.
Yes, that was my position.
Okay.
And hence, as I said to you earlier, I summarized the position as such.
Yeah.
No?
Yes, no, finish.
Okay, I thought now I can deal with the issue of this report.
Yes, no,
you've
that's
covered.
what I wanted to deal with, yeah.
Before he does that, Chair,
Yes.
I think the passage that he might have wanted, Mr. Tsotsi, it's in your bundle. Let's see whether that's what you wanted. It's the transcript on page 726. That is Eskom bundle 7 bracket A, P726. That's the bigger file, Mr. Tsotsi. The bigger one.
Oh, this one here.
Yeah. So it's an engagement between Mr. Linnell and board members, and Ms. Naidu, what appears to be Ms. Naidu, is asking a question. 726. Yeah, it says, yeah, Nick, I think that what you've shared with us is very enlightening, and I know that you have in your introduction shared with us that you have done quite a bit of work for other state-owned companies. I must admit I was expecting that you would have been physically involved with some of the detail. With where we find ourselves right now and not hypothetically, this is what you need to do. Now maybe I understand that brief incorrectly, and then I will take responsibility for it, but I thought that that is what you were going to bring to the table. Then Mr. Linnell then answers. If I could answer that, it is a good point to answer it. The thing is, there's different scores here. I would say my understanding of Eskom from the pre-research that I have had to do to be sitting here in front of you has been extensive. And it has taken some months. So I think I have an understanding. But I think what I see a minute ago is the failing. The failing. So could that have been the passage you wanted? Because there he says he's done, the pre-research is done, it's extensive, and it has taken some months. But we know from his affidavit that, as the chairperson has pointed out, he was called on the 6th to come on that day to the official residence of the Presidency in Pretoria. Is that the passage you had in mind?
Yeah, not quite. There is another passage which is fairly similar.
Oh, where he says he's done extensive work.
It's in that same bundle. The one that I had in mind.
Yes, but I'm just wondering, because Mr. Selegas Jr. could look for it while he is asking you other questions. Yeah. Is it one where Mr. Linnell talks about having done a lot of work? Is it a passage? What does the passage say? What's the point it advances?
Yes, he's advancing the point that he has spent quite some time doing work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe your junior can check in the meantime. Okay, all right. So let's go to the report. Did you say to them there was a report in the Presidency that related to the inquiry that needed to be established, or that sought to justify the need for an inquiry or something to that effect?
Chairman, the answer to your question is correct. Yes, I did. You will recall, I might have mentioned this, I think, during one of my previous appearances. There were 3 people who had documents. Well, let me say 2 people who had documents in relation to the meeting that we had gone to attend. It was Ms. Mieni and it was Nick himself. Mm-hmm. And I'm under the impression that from this, that Jabu also had documents. Mm-hmm. based on what we talked about earlier this morning. Now, it would seem to me that some of these documents had already contained some sort of background work that had been done at the presidency. And this is what I understood in the course of the conversation there, that some work had been done. And I was not shown these documents. I didn't ask for them. And when I mentioned them in the meeting, in fact, I think at one point I even mentioned that I could get someone who has this information to bring it along and show it to us.
Did you say to bring the report?
Yeah, to produce the report, in other words. Yes. So I didn't have it in my hands. So yes, the question is that the answer to the question is that yes, I did speak of the report, but I did not have the report in my hand.
But had you seen the report?
No, I had not seen the report.
Had somebody said to you there was a report that was available?
Yes, this is what was discussed.
And who was that? Who said that?
This was mentioned by both Nick and Dudu. Now, I don't know exactly who of them had this particular report.
Did they talk about a report, or did they talk about some documents that they might have?
Chairman, I can't recall precisely whether the term report was used or the term document was used. I would suspect the term document was more likely used. I think the term report probably came in the discussion of board members. Yes.
So one, you had not seen any report. Two, you think either Mr. Linnell or Mr. Dumieni or both mentioned at the meeting of the 8th of March in Durban that there were documents.
Yes.
Relating to work that had been done, which was connected with Eskom.
Yes.
But if they had said there were documents, why would you have talked about a report?
As I say, Chairman, the word report probably came through in the discussion at the board level. And it might have been one of the board members who raised the word report. It probably was not me as such. So the word report would have then just came into the conversation in that manner. But the idea was that the reference is to some document.
Yeah, yes. Because, it's one thing to say there are some documents which may be shared if the board members want relating to work that has been done, but to say there is a report is quite something different. It seems to me it's something you would say if either you had seen the report or somebody had said to you there was a report, but not if somebody talked about loose documents. What do you say to that?
Chair, as I say, I can't really recall, precisely whether there was a statement to the effect of there having been a report or documents. But as I say, I'm inclined to think that they were probably referred to documents. And I think the word report, came up in the discussion among board members as, if you like, reference to a document.
Because my impression of what some of the board members who testified were saying was that they were suggesting that you were pushing so much for the establishment of the inquiry that you may have told them some untruths, saying there was a report in the presidency when there was no report, saying Mr. Linnell had been appointed by the presidency. That's the impression I get from what they say. The impression might be wrong, but I don't know, Mr. Selegat, well,
No,
in terms of the impression that you got from them,
It's
their evidence.
it's consistent with yours, Chairperson. But I think I know that, Mr. Tsotsi, you mentioned the report.
Yes,
Yes,
Yeah.
he admits as well. I think you do admit that you talked
Yes.
about the report, yeah.
Yes. And it may well be, I'm making an observation and you can, it may well be that it was an effort on your part to give the gravitas to what you were bringing before the board.
Chair, certainly not on the basis of some untruths, no, certainly not. There's certainly not. I think if the other person who would have some knowledge of this clearly would be Nick Linnell.
Yes.
Yes. As to the existence of the documents that I'm talking about.
Yes, you see, it's one thing if you say there are some documents which reflect some work that has been done. But when you say a report, it's weightier, I would think, than if you just talk about some documents. Wouldn't you agree? A report seems to be, to say this is really something serious. There is quite a lot of work that has been done, so much work that a report has been prepared.
Chair, you can extract a report from it from documents that have been prepared.
Yes, yes, but still.
You know, so it could very well be that the documents existed and a particular focus was done on something which was being reported upon.
But what you do concede is that, as far as you know, there was no report. You are not able to say there was a report. All you can say is there may have been some documents. Is that correct?
What I'm saying, Chairman, is that I was informed that there were documents relating to work that had been done at the presidency.
Yes.
Yes. Now, in terms of whether these documents represent a report or not, quite honestly, I can't say yes or no.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yes.
Yes. On reflection, would you not say that given what you knew then and what you know now, which seems to be the same, namely you had been told there were some documents, nobody had used the word report to you, as I understand it. But of course, it could be that among those documents there was a report, I'm not sure. But based on that, wouldn't you say you probably should have talked about documents because that's what you had been told about?
Chairman, if it was going to make things any clearer, I'm more concerned, personally, to be honest, about the issue of misrepresentation.
Sorry?
The matter of misrepresentation of the facts.
The position,
I think, for me, that to them is really what their focus is, that I misrepresented. Hence, the charges that they brought against me were on the basis of my having misrepresented myself to them.
Yes.
So the issue of the report or not a report, I don't want to quibble about that.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to do that.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that there is no impression of misrepresentation of what transpired and what I reported.
You see, as I understand it, part of the point, and I don't remember that in the charges they included the issue of the report.
It's not included.
No. Yeah, it's not included in the charges.
Yes.
But one or more of the board members who testified said part of the reason why they lost confidence in you is because you had told them on the 11th of March that there was a report. It turned out later on that there was no report. And I don't know whether he or she said you admitted that there was no report at a later, when the charges were put, or on the day where you were supposed to answer to the charges. But he or she was saying part of the reason why they lost confidence in you is because you told them something that was not true in order to get them to make a certain decision, namely that there was a certain report in the presidency. And they said, it looks like there was no such report.
Chairman, I think we should make this thing very clear. What the board members complained about was the fact that they say I failed to produce the report that they say I mentioned earlier in the board meeting, previous meeting. Which is not the same thing as saying that I said there was a report and there's no report, in the sense of there was never a report or a document in the first place.
Yes, okay.
So
maybe they make that, maybe that's the point they make, okay? So if that's the point they make, what do you say?
I'm saying it's correct. I did not produce the report that they wanted because I did not have it with me. What I said earlier is that I could make someone available who would have the report or the document if board members wanted to. In fact, this is a statement that I think, question or statement which was made by either Norman or I can't remember who, but at some point I did indicate to them that I could make available, or I could bring get somebody to bring the report or to show the board the report. At some point, I also indicated during this meeting now on the 19th that I didn't, I don't remember exactly how I put it, but the idea was that I didn't consider myself privy to the report that was spoken about. I think that's a statement that I think I made on the meeting on the 19th.
You didn't what? Consider?
I didn't consider myself entitled to or privy to the report.
Chairperson, we have an extract from the transcript of the meeting of the 19th of March.
Yes.
And Mr. Tsotsi has it there. We've made copies because it's not incorporated in the bundle yet.
Yes. But you can read the relevant part.
Yeah, Mr. Tsotsi, I think you're referring to page 35 of that. I can hand up a copy for the purpose of the session.
Well, if you are going to read it, that's fine.
Is it fine, Chair?
I'll manage.
So, the report was being asked about here on page 35 of the transcript of the meeting of the 19th of March. And Ms. Naidu says, you advised us that these people did wrongdoings, and on the basis of that, we need to hold this inquiry and that they would interfere in the investigation, and on that basis, I believed you. But now you say you never saw that report. So did anybody around this table see the report? Then Mr. Tsotsi responds, no. When I was at the presidency, I was told quite clearly that there is a problem at Eskom, and a problem that is known to the president. And I wasn't going to ask him what is the problem. He said to me, I want to assign this man to go and help you with this investigation. Now, I do not believe that I was at liberty to ask him what was the problem. Quite honestly, I couldn't do that. I had to accept what he was telling me. And as I say to you, the problem really comes from the fact that I did not introduce this guy properly.
Yeah.
Is that the part
Yes.
you want to communicate to the chairperson?
Yes.
Chair, may I read from the transcript of the 9th of March? That one is in the bundle.
Yeah.
There's a couple of important aspects, one of which is this, Mr. Tsotsi, page 256, Eskom bundle 12. You say, I have been summoned by the President 3 times, and the most recently was yesterday, where he has finally made up his mind about what he wants to do about the situation with Eskom. Both Minister and I have been summoned by the President separately. So you've said that, and then later in the meeting you say, in actual fact, what has happened is that the Presidency has already given us a particular individual who they want to lead this particular inquiry, and that individual will then engage and liaise with us and work with us. And as the resources are required for the specific issues, that maybe have to be looked into, and then that individual will have to deem to source those specific resources. And then you say, so in a nutshell, I think, to be quite frank about it, the Presidency has gone out of its way to do all of the governance investigation as to what is possible under the circumstances. I was given a complete document which was prepared by the legal people at the Presidency, which actually says that what the role of the shareholder and the board would be in this kind of thing. So they have covered all the basics in terms of the requirements of all of the documentation that governs the company's work. Well, it's not quite the report you were talking about, but it's the documentation to govern the company's work, and then you go on to the MOI and so on. But what we see here is, you did tell the board, Mr. Nick Linnell has been assigned to assist. Then you are given a complete document by the Presidency, which deals with the role of the shareholder and the board. So what I was looking for was the mention of the report of an investigation by the President. It's alluded to there, but I think you will look for the passage where you're specifically dealing with. So, Chair, I think that answers him having said to the board, Mr. Nick Linnell was assigned.
Yes, no, he admitted that.
Yes.
On the report, I think we are no wiser than we were before.
Yeah, yes.
Because the passage that Mr. Selega has read suggests that you told the board that the Presidency had done some investigation, and they gave you a complete document about the shareholder and the board or Eskom. But we don't know whether you were referring to that document. But based on your earlier evidence, it's unlikely that you were referring it to it, because you said your notion of a report is connected with documents that you were told about at the meeting, at the Durban meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Selega, I think you may proceed.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I must say that, Mr. Tsotsi, I have said to the board members who have told the chairperson, the commission, about the report, that they have nonetheless, when Mr. Baloyi asked repeatedly about that report, associated themselves with the, and that's exactly what the board, entire board ultimately did, with the comment or the position, the view articulated by Dr. Ngubane that there might be a report out there, but that's not our report. We must make our own decision.
Yes, I recall.
You remember that?
Yes.
And so I have asked them if they ultimately make the decision in disregard, complete disregard of what may have been presented to them as a report, articulated to them as a report, why did they turn around and want to blame you again for a report they said they don't need in order to make the decision? You follow that?
Yes.
But why didn't you tell them that on the 19th of March?
Chairman, that meeting of the 19th of March was incredibly stressful. When I reflect on that meeting now, I have to say that I was under a lot of stress. Because by that time, I was aware that the board was pursuing me. So I was not really at my best in terms of being able to deal with myself in that meeting. The whole meeting was accusatory. It was clear that was the purpose of the meeting. And so there are a lot of things which I could have recalled that had happened earlier that I did actually not recall. Because my whole frame of mind was not correct.
You see, why these issues are important is in part because they may be relevant to the question of what the reasons were for the board to push you out. Because to the extent that that's the impression that's created, did they push you out because maybe somebody outside of Eskom, as part of some agenda, wanted you out because you were not cooperating with the Guptas? Or is the position that indeed there were some grounds for your colleagues on the board to feel, for them to lose confidence in you and therefore to seek your removal? So that's where these issues become important.
Yes.
As I say, one or more board members say part of the reason why we lost confidence in him is that he told us there was a report when there was no report, or when he was asked to produce the report, he couldn't produce the report. So therefore suggesting that the reason why he couldn't produce it is because it didn't exist. He had told us something that was not true. That's the impression I get from the evidence of some of the board members who have testified. Therefore, we were entitled to lose confidence in him. Or whether you, because you may not have been cooperating with the Guptas, some members of the board or the board was influenced from outside of Eskom to get rid of you. You see, that's where the relevance is.
Yes.
But I think you have said what I think you wanted to say on it. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Selega.
Yes, the other point, Mr. Tsotsi, I think we could take it also as covered to a large extent is the engagement of Mr. Nick Linnell, because that was one of the issues the board members raised with you. Yes. You brought this man, you engaged him, you didn't follow procurement procedures, and you engaged him without informing the board.
Yes, I think that was covered last time.
Yes.
With him and with the board members, that was covered.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we've read, you actually did inform the board members there.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the last thing on this, was the terms of reference and the media statement that got leaked. They also took you to task on that.
Didn't he deal
one.
with that as well? I don't know about the terms of reference, but
Yes.
didn't he deal with the leaking of the alleged leaking of, he dealt with that. You dealt with that last time, Mr.
We spoke
The
about
charges,
it,
you dealt with all the charges as far as I recall, or am I mistaken?
Dealt with the charges, yes.
And they included the allegation that you had leaked the media statement to the media that had not been approved by the board. Isn't it?
Chairman, that is what the allegation was.
Yes, what I'm saying is you have dealt with it in your evidence. We have asked you about it, isn't it?
Yes, you have asked me about it, yes.
Yeah, so we don't need to
So
repeat that.
we're
Yeah.
moving on.
Yeah.
There is an aspect, Chairman, which I guess it will be covered under the terms of reference. Is that where you wanted to go now? Because
Yeah, because I've seen that the two are interlinked.
Yes.
Having visited the meeting of the 19th of March of 2015, the communication within the board, that they have linked the two. I know that I haven't linked them with you before, and maybe you can touch on that briefly for the chairpersons.
What was the allegation about the terms of reference? That he put himself in the committee that was going to do the investigation?
no, Chair.
What was the allegation about the terms of
The
reference?
charge was that he commissioned the drafting of the terms of reference
Yes.
that were not consistent with what the board had in mind.
Was that part of the charge or that's just an allegation?
It was part of the charge and the debate on the 19th of March.
Yes, okay. And we didn't deal with it. He didn't deal with it before.
We didn't go into the details with Mr. Tsotsi. We did with Ms. Klein.
Okay, let's deal with it
Yeah.
then.
And let me just tell the chairperson how the two, because the media's statement that gets to be leaked, Chair, reports on the terms of reference. So it says these are the terms of reference and inquiry and so on. And the complaint is that, but what this media statement is communicating to the public as the terms of reference for the inquiry, it's incorrect.
Okay,
It's inconsistent with the board's own terms of inquiry.
okay, okay.
So that's how the two connect. And Mr. Tsotsi, then you can deal with it.
Yeah, what do you say about that?
Yeah.
Chairman, during that meeting of the 19th, when the issue of these terms of reference was being discussed, there was an allegation that I instructed Nick, to prepare terms of reference which were at variance with the terms of reference that the ARC had prepared. And at one point there was a question which says, did I or did Nick have access to the terms of reference that ARC had prepared? And quite clearly he saw them and he infused his own view on them, which is the document which they allege was the one that was leaked. So in other words, the view of the ARC committee vis-a-vis the view of Nick Linnell were some divergence. Now, what transpired in the meeting was that one of the board members, I can't remember exactly who it was, had made an indication, a statement, to the fact that the source of the problem is that the terms of reference which Nick had prepared are in fact quite at variance with the terms of reference that the minister spoke of at the meeting on the Wednesday. That would have been the
11th of March.
11th. Now, Chairman, that's a curious statement because I don't recall the minister dealing with terms of reference in her meeting. And it seems as though there was some information or some knowledge that some of the board members had in respect of what should go into the terms of reference, which I certainly did not have, nor did Nick have. So you recall also, Chairman, at that time, there were allegations of that meeting on the 16th that supposedly the minister had with some of the board members. And it was immediately after that meeting when Nick Linnell was informed to cease to get engaged on this issue. So I don't know whether it's possible to connect somehow the whole rationale about the objection to Nick's terms of reference as against what was required by ARC, and ARC having been informed from elsewhere as to what terms of reference they should adopt. I think the whole attitude towards Nick about the work he had done on the terms of reference and simply just dumping him from doing that work seems to have been informed by something that occurred. And in Nick's statement, he also makes the point that it is his terms of reference that has caused the rift between him and the board. It's as though these terms of reference were not in accordance with some interest of some sort. Now, it's difficult for me to be able to adduce anything beyond what I'm saying, but I'm just basing myself on the observations that I've made as a result of the issue around the terms of reference. Yeah. So I think I don't know whether the evidence shows anything more than this.
Yeah, let me read to the chairperson, just to the record as well. Because I think we need to get correct what the member of the board said in this regard. Chair, it's a transcript again of the 19th of March, and I'll read quickly from that. The members are debating, March 2015, the board members are debating about Mr. Linnell getting involved at the behest of Mr. Tsotsi. So Ms. Naidu says, Nick can be fired and he could leave. And she carries on. But if we get these terms of reference incorrect, we do not do the right thing on this inquiry, this board is going to be a laughingstock. It's going to be like a laughingstock. And she carries on. And right now, there is no document in black and white that said any of these people have done something seriously wrong. The terms of reference that this guy put out there is not what we have got. She's referring to Mr. Linnell, or what we have drafted. And it is not in terms of what the minister said to us on Wednesday. So that is our bigger problem. This consultant can go because he has acted unethically already. So I think what Mr. Tsotsi is drawing attention to is the fact that the terms of reference drafted by Mr. Linnell were said to be inconsistent with what the minister had told the board, or told us, it is said, on Wednesday. And that's the bigger problem. Mr. Tsotsi, you say you were not aware. I don't even know what the minister said. I think Ms. Naidu is coming back and we will ask her about that. But do you know what the minister had said, which would have made the terms of reference prepared by Mr. Nick to be inconsistent with that?
No, there's nothing I know that the minister said to that effect in that meeting, Chairman. So I'm at a loss as to why that statement is being made. Yeah.
We have covered the allegations by Mr. Koko as to what he alleges was Mr. Tsotsi's role in his suspension.
Yes.
We have covered the allegation about that Mr. Linnell that Mr. Tsotsi said Mr. Linnell had been appointed by the Presidency.
Yes,
We
Chair.
have covered the allegations that Mr. Tsotsi said there was a report in the Presidency. And then you have just covered the terms of reference. But I don't know whether there is anything more Mr. Tsotsi wanted to say on the terms of reference. I think you are done with them.
Yes.
If you still have some questions on them, that's fine. But I'm trying to remember whether how much else is left in terms of matters of substance that were raised by board members and Mr. Koko and maybe whoever else. that
Yes.
Mr.
Chair, can I
Mr.
raise
Tsotsi
another
needs-
issue?
Mr. Tsotsi may need to deal with.
Yes.
Before that, Mr. Tsotsi.
No.
Yes, Mr. Selega. You would have a fresher recollection of the issues we needed to cover with him.
Yeah. I think Chair, he's covered, he's covered those aspects. I mean, he's covered them in his affidavit as well. Mr. Paminsky, I mean, the last page of your affidavit.
What was Mr. Paminsky's allegations against Mr. Tsotsi?
Is the same that Mr. Tsotsi motivated for the suspension of the 4 executives, including the FD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
And allegations of misdemeanors.
Yeah, so it's nothing different from what we have dealt with already.
Yes, no, it's all in the same
Yeah.
broad themes.
But what I wanted to check was whether there are any issues outstanding that you intended to raise with Mr. Tsotsi that have not been covered, or whether we have covered them.
We've covered that. There was one issue of interest. It doesn't relate to an allegation against him.
But you would like him to deal with it.
Yeah, I would like to ask him that question, Chair, so
Yes,
he can
before-
answer it.
Before,
Yes.
he wanted to say something, Mr. Tsotsi, you wanted to say something on this?
Yes,
on
Chairman.
what I was saying.
No, not on what you're saying. I just wanted to amplify something that has come to light, which has not been raised in the commission before in regards to this matter.
Yes, do that.
And that is that it has come to light that Mr. Linnell was actually paid by Eskom for the services that he provided from the 11th to the 18th of March 2015.
I thought Mr. I'm sorry. I thought when he gave evidence, I thought Mr. Linnell said he had not been paid. Maybe mistaken. So you say he has been paid for those days,
Correct.
for the work that he did for Eskom during that time.
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah.
But apart from making that statement, is there some point you seek to drive with that statement, with the fact that he was paid by Eskom?
Well, all I'm really driving at, Chairman, is that to me seems to be, at the very least, a tacit, acceptance of the fact that the board considered him having been employed. It's a tacit admission that he has been remunerated because he provided the service to the board, which service the board wants to disavow at some point.
Based on your experience, I mean, you were chairperson of the board for a number of years. I don't know whether 3 or 4 before the 2015 board. Would that kind of payment have had to be approved by the board? In other words, can one say that because he was paid, the board must have approved that he be paid? Because if he submitted an invoice and some official paid, the board might say, well, that issue never came to us. If it had come to us, we would have said no.
Chairman, the short answer is definitely the board would have had to approve, for the simple reason that Mr. Linnell was not engaged by any of the executives or by any executive or order authority. He was engaged directly by the board. And the services provided were not provided as a result of some executive requirement. There's nothing in the books of the executive management at Eskom which says Mr. Linnell was asked to do this, and therefore he needs to be remunerated for it. It's clearly coming from the board. It has to.
Well, what about the fact that you told the board that he had been appointed by the presidency? Shouldn't one expect that he would be paid by the presidency? Why was he paid by Eskom?
Well, I don't know whether the word appointed was used. I don't recall, but I do recall saying that the president had asked that this man assist us.
Well, I thought you used the word appointed, and I thought
don't know. Did I maybe
you also
I did.
said
I don't recall.
the president gave Mr. Linnell to you, or this gentleman to Eskom to help them, to help Eskom. How can they give without paying?
Well, that could have been an observation that Eskom themselves would have made.
Yeah. Okay.
Chair,
Yes,
the correspondence regarding the request for payment by Mr. Linnell shows that it's an email from him, 16 December 2015, and it's addressed to Mr. Khoza.
Mr. Khoza. Was he acting CEO at the time? You don't know.
December 2015, no. No, Mr. Molefe would have been the acting. Ron Molefe would have been.
Well, he would have been appointed permanently, actually, by December, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Brian Molefe.
As the CEO, that's correct.
Yeah.
So Mr. Khoza then became a normal board member. Or was he the acting chairman? No, he was not the acting chairman.
No, he was not at that point.
So the email is to him. Says, thanks for following up. I have attached the invoices. And then Ms. Zitembe Khoza forwards the invoices to Mr. Anod Singh the next day, the 17th of December 2015. Then the invoices, there's a reply from Ms. Maya Bana to Mr. Zitembe Khoza, say we will sort the payment by next week.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, have a blessed Christmas.
Let's leave it at that. I think ask your last question to Mr.
Yes.
Tsotsi.
My next question is this, Mr. Tsotsi. It's now become common cause before the commission. I'd put it at that level. I hope it is at that level. That on the 9th of March 2015, the suspension of the executives was not mentioned. Mr. Pamensky has said that. You have said that. The executives have said that. Mr. Matuna and Ms. Tsolofelo Molefe. But when you look at the transcript, you pick up comments by two board members, one Dr. Ngubane and the other by Mr. Pamensky. And his comments to this effect. You have introduced the idea of the inquiry from the presidency and so on. Firstly, Dr. Ngubane, Eskom Bundle 12, page 263, just for the purposes of the record, he says, now we are being asked to form a subcommittee, commit our fiduciary duty to this thing, and then the subcommittee takes very serious steps that will involve cost that we might involving restructuring the organization, etc., probably in firing some people. And he says, no, Chairman, we cannot work like this. I'm sorry. And I was curious on the comment that this might involve firing some people. Did this occur to you at that stage?
Chairman, no, there's nothing of that nature that occurred to me at that time to do with firing some people.
No, what I'm asking you is, did you pick this up, that he had said the inquiry might probably involve firing of some people?
The statement was not significant to me at the time. I mean, I did not attribute anything of significance to the statement at the time, absolutely. I had no basis whatsoever to think that there could be such a proposition at any point in the process.
In similar vein, I want to read to you what Mr. Makpamensky says. Again, Eskom Bundle 12, page 270. He says, yes, thank you, Chair. Some of my concerns are, first of all, I really think we should all, as a board, meet with the stakeholder. My biggest concern is that we going down on this report, and it is going to take up a lot of management time. And as what we know, it is the skill set at the high extra level, there is a massive problem. If we lose top staff members during this critical time, it really puts the business at a huge risk. And that is my biggest concern. You know, skills are very hard to find within this level. And I think we really need to understand that. Like in a normal process, I understand that an investigation wants to happen. And I am very for an investigation should it happen, but it is all about the timing of the investigation. But he says, if we lose top staff members during this critical time, but there hasn't been any mention of that. And once again, my question is, did you take note of this at that stage, on the 9th of March 2015?
I did not take it as something that could have imply any consequences that might, occur down the line. An inquiry vis-a-vis loss of top skills in the business, that relationship, I did not make anything of it at all at the time when Mark was saying it, Mark Pomensky. So, on reflection, Chairman, it may mean something more than meets the eye, but right now, at the time we were dealing with this matter at that meeting, no, there was no significance in my mind.
Yeah, isn't that surprising? Because at least if anybody knew about the idea to suspend, it would have been you.
Correct.
Even though you did not articulate or communicate it to the board on the 9th.
Yes.
So when you sit there and you hear one says some people might be fired, and you haven't introduced the idea, top staff management might be lost, and you haven't introduced that idea. You say it didn't strike you as something strange.
Certainly not at the time.
Not at the time.
No.
Mr. Silega, I missed something. Who said what about top people being fired and when?
The last one is Mr. Mark Paminsky, Chair.
Speaking when?
On the 9th of March, 2015.
Yeah, what did he say?
He says to Mr. Tsotsi, talking about the inquiry, he responds, he says, my biggest concern is that we're going down on this report and it is going to take up a lot of management time as we want, as we know, it is the skill set at the high extra level, there is a massive problem. If we lose top staff members during this critical time, it really puts the business at a huge risk. And that is my biggest concern.
You are reading from his affidavit.
No, I'm reading
talking
from,
about what he said at the meeting of the 9th,
I'm reading from the transcript, Chair,
of the meeting of the 9th.
of the meeting of the 9th.
So does it amount to him saying at some stage some top people at Eskom would be fired? What does it say about firing?
If we lose top staff members during this critical time, he seems to express either
A fear or concern that the Eskom could lose top people?
yes.
And from the context of the transcript, does it indicate where he was coming from with this idea? From the transcript?
That's the point, Chair. No.
Oh, so that's the point you are raising.
Yes.
To say, how could he talk about the possibility of Eskom losing
Top
top
staff.
people
Yes.
on the 9th
Yes.
in circumstances where we know that the previous day at the Durban meeting, the discussion had included the suspension of some executives.
That's right.
And because it was only Mr. Tsotsi from the board who
Yes.
had attended the Durban meeting, we expect that if any board member knew about what had been discussed at the meeting in Durban, he or she would know it through Mr. Tsotsi.
That's right.
And if Mr. Tsotsi had not told any member,
On the 9th.
then there is a question mark as to why Mr. Paminsky was talking about the possibility of Eskom losing top people
Yes. Yes.
when in 2 or 3 days' time, that topic was going to be before the board.
Yes.
And of course, the decision taken to suspend them.
Yes. And the,
Okay.
and the evidence is that it was only on the 11th, 2 days later,
Yes,
that the minister came to the meeting and planted, they used the word, planted the seed of suspensions.
yes, yes, yes.
So 2 days before, apart from Mr. Tsotsi, nobody should be knowing in the board that there is a possibility of us losing, and he uses the word top staff
Yes.
members.
Yes. Where is that transcript to be found? What
Eskom Bundle 12.
bundle 12?
Bundle 12, Chair. Page 270.
Okay.
It's at the bottom of the page, against line 20, Chair.
Okay, I'll read it
Yes.
later to see if there is a connection.
Yes. And
Okay, all right.
And
Are you done or you still
I am.
have?
Dr. Ngubane also made a similar comment, Chair.
Yes.
Two-
Is it on the
263.
same bundle?
Yes, the same transcript.
Do you want to tell me whereabouts?
Yes, page 263. At the bottom, against line 20 as well.
Just read it into the record.
Shall I read it, Chair?
Yes.
Against line 20, it says, you know, we have had coal plus cost, mines, this and that, but it is all being lectured to us without a chance to interrogate. Now we are being asked to form a subcommittee, commit our fiduciary duty to this thing, and then the subcommittee takes very serious steps that will involve cost, that we might involving restructuring the organization, etc. Then he says, probably in firing some people. There's no chairman. I mean, we cannot work like this. I'm sorry. But why did they think people will be fired? Why did they think top staff members would lose their jobs on the 9th of March 2015?
Yes, I think questions should be put to them about these statements.
Yes.
So that they get a chance to explain.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll provide an understandable explanation or context. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Was that your last question?
That was the last.
Okay.
From my side.
Mr. Ngcebesha, I nearly just assumed that you might have no re-examination. Do you intend to, would you like to re-examine or not really?
Chairperson, yes, but very briefly.
Yeah. What's your estimate? 5 minutes? 10 minutes?
10 at the most.
Sorry?
10 minutes at the most.
Yes, okay. That's right. Let's go for it.
Thank you very much. I would beg the chairperson's pardon in as far as the correct referencing of your bundles before you.
You don't have similar...
I don't have a full site with me, but
okay.
the documents have been referenced.
Maybe we'll be able to just follow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, all right. Are you fine doing it from there, or would you like to go to the podium?
It's fine. I could proceed from here.
Okay, all right. Okay.
The first one is to make reference to, just to bring to the attention of Mr. Tsotsi.
I'm sorry, I think you might deprive yourself of the opportunity to appear on television.
Okay.
They must sanitize the podium, then you can stand there. I know that's not your concern.
It's not our primary concern at all. But I do understand that you have an overarching interest.
The TV people might complain because they want you to appear on their television.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Tsotsi, in your affidavit, supplementary affidavit that you were taken through by the evidence leader earlier, the last one you filed, where you are discussing issues related to Mr. Linnell. I think it's paragraph 13 of your affidavit.
I've got paragraph 13.
I'm told it's Eskom 07-1233.
I've got it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, if you refer to any of his affidavits and you mention the paragraph, I will get it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Mr. Tsotsi, if you don't mind, let's look, maybe that for expedience, let me read paragraph 13. You state in his affidavit for the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprise, Mr. Linnell states on page U17 AZT 149, 13.1, add paragraph 16. While Ms. Mee and his son played no active role in the meeting, Jabu provided information about the state of Eskom, including allegations of wrongdoing and reasons for business failures, some of which are in the public domain. 13.2, add paragraph 17. To the best of my recollection, Jabu had a number of documents that dealt with alleged events at Eskom. These were largely from unidentified sources and unverified content. These were things an investigation would identify and were background in the context, but in part, some of the allegations did provide some value in scoping and approach to the investigation. That's close the inverted commas or quote and full stop. Now, there was a conversation between the chairperson and yourself regarding documents versus report. Is this by any chance dealing with that conversation, or is this something completely different?
Yes, this was the conversation.
Yeah, and I'm on specifically the terminology. Here we use the terminology documents. In the earlier record, where I think it's in the transcript of proceedings, if not mistaken, of the 11th of March 2015, there appears to have been an allegation that you indicated you have a report from the presidency. Are you talking about the same thing here, or are you talking about a different thing there?
This is the same set of documents. The reference in the board meeting was the reference, as indicated here, of documents that dealt with the alleged events or misdemeanors at Eskom.
No. Okay. Now we have established that you and correct me if I'm wrong, you use the word documents, or at least Mr. Linnell, who you are quoting verbatim here, uses the wording documents, yet when you are recorded in the transcript of the 11th of March, you use the word report. And you were meaning the same thing, or you were talking separate things?
I was referring to the same things.
All right.
Yes.
Now, since we have now established we're talking about the same thing, in the same transcript, and I beg your pardon again, Chairperson, because I don't have it with me as we speak. At the time when, I think it was Mr. Norman Baloyi in particular, who persisted to request that you provide the report at the meeting, that would be the basis amongst which reliance could be sought for the mooted suspensions. What, if you recall, was Dr. Ben Ngubane's engagement on that topic?
Chair, my recollection there was that Dr. Ngubane was not interested in a document which is not our document, meaning an Eskom document. His attitude was, that's a report, someone else's. We are looking for our own report, and that's what we should be looking for. Essentially, that was the comment that he made.
Now, did that intervention by Dr. Ben Ngubane dispel of the need for the report to be brought forth, or was there a follow-up request after he had made that intervention?
No, there was no follow-up request in terms of board members wanting me to produce a report.
Put differently, did the fellow board members of the meeting accept his intervention when he said that, but we're not interested in the reports of other entities like the president's. We want our own report. Because I'm trying to deal with this issue that says that later, a few days later, an allegation is made that you made reference to a report which Linnell refers to as some documentation here, which you say is the same thing, that Dr. Ngubane intervenes in the conversation against the backdrop of a request from Norman Baloyi and says, but we're not interested. It's not our report. We need to do our own. Was there a follow-up request?
Chairman, the board members appear to have lost interest in pursuing that issue when Dr. Ngubane made the statement he made. I at that time, I did not pursue the issue any further after Dr. Ngubane had indicated that he felt that we should be talking about our own report. Yes.
My learned friends, juniors, very kind to me. It's Eskom 1238, sorry, Eskom 12381 in terms of your bundles, Chairperson. In particular, I think Mr. Baloyi starts to speak there, and then later the Chairperson, and it runs up to Eskom 12382.
I'm able to follow.
Thank you very much.
Able to follow, yeah.
So then, in the light of this record, on the 19th, it would appear an allegation is then made against you that you, by the way, told us of a report that you later could not produce. Yet you say the acceptance there was that it's not necessary, even if it was available. Is that what we should understand?
That's the view we should take, Chairman, because as I say, I was under pressure a lot in that meeting on the 19th. And there are a number of things which I could have indicated, which I did not indicate, because my whole mindset was, unfocused on my having to defend myself from the attack which was made against me by the board. Yes, but in answer to the question, that would be the case. I would accept what Mr. Ngubesha said.
In as far as the alleged misdemeanors that was also discussed at length earlier on, certainly it would appear on record you had to clarify as you testified what Nick Linnell's document would have been referring to. And then you testified also today that, but the conclusionary remarks you made as found in your affidavit were clearly stated as you read into the record that there was no basis upon which wrongdoing was imputed on the executives to be contemplated to be suspended, notwithstanding the fact that there may have been allegations that had not yet been verified. Is that correct to understand?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So, and then there is an allegation later that, and I'm treating really the theme that could there have been a proper basis for your fellow board members to have lost confidence in you other than for the fact that there was a plan that you may not have been aware of that was going on, hijacking these proceedings that you thought were ordinary, innocent inquiry, yet there were people that may have been aware of other things unbeknown to you.
Chairman, this is a quandary for me because I have, I think earlier, even myself stated that there were some goings on which are difficult to explain in terms of impacting the issues that were currently going on at the time. So it could very well be that this could have been the case. You will recall also, Chair, I don't know whether this was put before the Commission as evidence, but I seem to think that it was, that following one of these allegations about secret meetings, I wrote a letter to the Minister complaining about, in fact, this very existence of a secret meeting, and that these meetings were designed to sabotage the work that the board is doing, and in fact were contrary to the spirit that we were doing this business in, and as a consequence of that, the board is not doing what it is expected to do. I even suggested to the minister that the minister should dissolve the board on the basis of this kind of behavior. So there was a lot of that going on. Yes.
Perhaps to move now to Mr. Linnell's affidavit, which was, as I understand it, filed in December last year, 2020. This chairperson, I don't know whether it's already in the record, but was made available to us, at least to me, late yesterday. And I do believe that my colleague, we received it from Advocate Silega.
What document is it?
It's Mr. Nick Linnell's supplementary affidavit pursuant to him having appeared on the 5th and the 6th of October last year, where he seeks to explain certain things that he believes that when reflecting on the transcript of proceedings were not put thoroughly as he would have loved to.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I've seen it, but if you have got it, either we have it or the evidence leaders have got it.
I'm sure the evidence leaders do have it because we got it from them.
Yeah.
The specific paragraph is paragraph 50.14.
Maybe you should just state what the date of the affidavit is so that it will be easy to trace it when it was deposed to.
Just a second, I'll get to it now. It's the 17th of December, 2020.
Okay, I think Mr. Silega appears to want to say something about it. Maybe speak from where you are, Mr. Silega, if you can, because the person who is going to sanitize seems to be far. Yes. Yes.
Supplementary affidavit.
Yes.
So the chair and us will not have it in the bundle.
At the moment.
At this present moment, yes, because Mr. Tsotsi didn't address it specifically in his latest supplementary affidavit.
Okay, all right. Just in case that was not captured in the record, Mr. Silega says the affidavit to which Mr. Ngabesha is referring was received by the Commission, but has not been included in the bundle. But you may go ahead, Mr. Ngabesha, because we want to finish Mr. Tsotsi's evidence.
Paragraphs 50.14, and I will read it into the record very shortly. Certainly, to my knowledge, there was no involvement of Mr. Koko or the Guptas prior to the 11th of March 2015. 50.15, if I had been part of the ploy to suspend executives under the pretext of an inquiry, it would have been logical to assume that I would have, as a business consultant who derives his living from such work, to have acquiescence to the board's demand to limit the inquiry and simply earn part of the 23 million rand fees that Denton's earned through a limited investigation. One would not expect me to act to my own detriment. The only benefit I secured from this engagement was the 30,000 rand fee that ultimately was paid for my services for the work done from the evening of the 8th of March to about the 18th of March. That is, and I close the quotation there. You had made reference to payment being made to Mr. Linnell. Is this where you attribute this fee that was paid from? Or is there any other reference?
That's correct, Chairman. I saw it in that document.
I could be done, if I may beg your pardon, just one more second to check on my notes.
Okay.
Thank you. One last point, Chairperson. A lot of discussion occurred earlier regarding the exchange between yourself and the minister, in particular regarding the composition and the names of the board committees that on the 16th of December 2014 you had sent to the minister. And then later on, at least on record, what has been made available is the revised one that you sent to the minister in January. Now, if I may beg my evidence leaders' assistance on that specific affidavit, because I want to make reference to a specific paragraph.
Okay. While your counsel is looking for the relevant passages, can I clarify this? With regard to the composition of the different committees of the board that we talked about earlier, ultimately, the composition of the committees of the board that prevailed and was implemented, was it the one that the minister had insisted upon, had sent to you, or was it another one that you put up?
Chairman, from what I saw of the document that was prepared to show the two, 16th December and 26th January, the 16th December one is the one that I had sent to the minister, which I had received from Mr. Salim Essa, which I may say, and I will say this in a follow-up affidavit, is substantially the same as what appears on my on the 26th of January.
Yes, but my question was not that. My question was, we saw the composition of the board committees that you sent to the minister on the 16th of December, which you say you got from Mr. Salim Essa, the composition, but the email was your email.
Yes.
And then we have seen the composition of the board committees that you sent to the minister on the 26th of January.
Yes.
And you said the minister sent you the same composition as the composition you sent him on the 16th of December, which was the composition given to you by Mr. Salim Essa. My question is, which composition was ultimately implemented?
It is that same composition.
Which one?
The one that I received from the minister, and I said,
Yes.
the one I had sent to the minister.
Yes, that's the one that was ultimately implemented.
Correct.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Save, as I said, Chairman, for my involvement, my membership of the Investment and Finance Committee.
So when in the one that you sent to the minister on the 16th of December, your name was reflected also in the Investment and Finance Committee.
Yes.
And the one that the minister sent to you was the same, except that your name was no longer in the Investment and Finance Committee. Is that what you're saying?
No.
What she sent you was exactly what you had sent him.
Correct.
But later on, you yourself took your name out of the Investment and Finance Committee.
That's correct.
And was there a replacement for you in that committee, or was there no replacement? Or you can't remember?
There was a replacement. There was somebody else who took my position.
Yeah, would you have decided on the replacement, or would the minister have been
I decided on the replacement.
without the minister?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, all right. So, but ultimately, it's the one you received from the minister that was implemented, subject to the fact that your name was no longer in the Investment and Finance Committee, and somebody else was put in there. And the person who was put in was decided upon by yourself.
Correct.
Okay. But you just said now, I think that you said the composition was substantially the same. You remember in the morning we talked, we tried to establish from you whether it was exactly the same or substantially. And I thought you said exactly, but now you say substantially. You remember that discussion?
Yes, Chairman, I remember that. I think I might have used the word exactly in my affidavit to the Portfolio Committee.
Yes.
But now on seeing and on recalling that I had actually moved myself out of the IFC, it would not be identical.
Well, it may be that I am attributing to you something in a different context, something you said in a different context, because you may have been saying in the morning, the composition that the minister sent to you was exactly the same as the composition you sent to her on the 16th of December.
That is correct.
So if you say the two were the same, exactly the same, that would be correct.
Yes.
What is different is the composition that was ultimately implemented, because the one that was ultimately implemented differed from the one you sent to the minister on the 16th of December, and the one the minister sent to you only in one respect, namely that your name was no longer in the Committee for Investment and Finance. Otherwise, it was the same.
Correct. Don't forget, Chairman, I also said that I also did my changes.
Yes.
Which included, amongst others, my removal of myself from the IFC.
Yes, yeah, no, I understand that. But
So the only thing that got retained, even after the minister had instructed that the composition of the committee should be exactly as she had sent it back to me, which included me in the IFC, I still changed myself, took myself out
that
of the
part,
IFC,
yeah.
even post that time.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, Mr. Nabesh.
Precisely my area of interest in clarification on
okay.
re-examination.
Okay.
May I request that we first focus on Eskom 071222, paragraph 4, as we try and clarify.
Yes, you can continue.
And I read into the record, this is Mr. Zola Tsotsi's affidavit, supplementary affidavit.
Okay, you're reading too softly, I think.
Oh, it is Mr. Tsotsi's affidavit, paragraph 4, and I read.
Yeah, it is the one that is exhibit U 17.2, starting at page 1222. And you are reading from?
Correct. Paragraph 4 of that.
Yeah.
To the best of my recollection, the allocations as reflected in my email of 16 December 2014 are precisely as I had received them from Mr. Salim Essa. Mm-hmm. At the time, I decided to pass it on to the Minister Brown as is. In my commentary regarding the chairperson of Audit and Risk Committee needing to be a CA, I was priming the minister to changes that I intend to make, which subsequently did. I suppose I did. One such change was removing my name from the Investment and Finance Committee. Close quote. Now, what do you mean by this? Do you want to expand? I mean, we understand what you meant. You did pass exactly that which you received from Salim Essa to the minister. But also you say you were priming the minister to changes. What do you mean by priming? Expand on that.
Chairman, when I looked at the committee of the allocation, I clearly did not agree with what was on there. So when I'm talking about priming the minister, I was alerting her that I'm likely to make some changes.
Okay, hold on.
That was my.
Let's hold on there. Now, Chairperson, if I beg your pardon and ask us to consider Eskom 07031. This is Mr. Tsotsi's original affidavit. On paragraph 20.3, I start to read.
Yes, that's right.
The other occasion was when the new board came into being, where I was required to place board members in subcommittees of the board. Salim Essa sent me his configuration and asked that I pass it on to the minister as my submission. I quietly ignored his submission and sent mine to the minister, whereupon the minister responded with the exact submission I had received from Salim Essa. I kept going back and forth with this process of chopping and changing the allocations with the minister until she called me to a meeting. At the meeting was Salim Essa and Tony Gupta. She merely informed me that the board allocations will be the way she sent them to me. This she did in the presence of these two gentlemen. I do not know if Mr. Essa had any involvement in my resignation from the board. Now, I close quote there. What we're picking up from your original affidavit, read together with this supplementary, is that, and you must correct me where I'm wrong, the original list that you sent on the 16th of December was received from Salim Essa and was sent as is to the minister. Is that correct?
Correct.
Secondly, what we are picking up, specifically reading from your original affidavit, is that whereas we've dealt with the chairperson regarding the inaccuracy of placing the words quietly ignored, because that's not what really happened.
Yes.
Notwithstanding what your intention was to convey.
Yes.
But the reality is that there was a back and forth chopping and changing between yourself and the minister. Can you expand on that, what you meant?
What I meant there is that I made the changes or suggested changes following what minister's response was when I sent Salim Issa's original submission. And I then got the idea from the minister again that I should not make any changes, and the allocation is as what she had sent me.
Perhaps.
So,
Yes, continue.
so this culminated then in her calling me to a meeting, because I suppose in her mind I was resisting what she was saying by introducing changes that were not in accordance with what she had wanted to happen.
Do you know do you know why she would insist on the composition of committees being the way she wanted them to be, other than the one or two committees that she says in her affidavit she was legally entitled to decide upon? Because she says in her affidavit, legally, I was entitled or obliged or I had a responsibility to see to the composition of, I think, the Audit and Risk Committee and the Ethics Committee. The other committees, she seems to concede that she did not legally have a right or power to determine their composition. But here now, on your version, she was insisting that even with regard to the other committees, the composition should be the way she wanted and not the way you, as the chairperson, or you, as the board, wanted them. Do you know why she would have insisted on doing something that she had no right to do?
Chairman, I don't know explicitly.
Yes.
I don't have any evidence to that effect that I can say I know.
And
However, the moment I got this document with the composition from Salim Essa where he said I should pass it on to the minister, I immediately had in mind that there must be some relationship between Salim Essa and Minister Brown, that Salim would ask me to do a thing like this. And then what was reinforced in my mind in terms of that was when I then was called by the minister and she insisted on what she insisted, i.e. that the allocation that I originally got from Salim should stay as it is and unchanged. And doing that in the presence of Salim Essa and Tony Gupta. So I came to the conclusion there and then that she was serving the interests of people outside of Eskom, namely the Guptas. That's the impression I have, and that's the impression I got at the time.
Okay, Mr. Navesh.
That will be all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think there is just one or two last things, Mr. Tsotsi. You know, your counsel referred you to your affidavit where he quoted, or where in your affidavit you had quoted Mr. Linnell, talking about documents that Mr. Masongani had at the meeting in Durban. And he asked you whether those are the documents that you were talking about when you said there was a report. And you said yes. You remember that?
Yes.
But I'm under the impression, and I think I did say this before, you didn't say that's not true. I'm under the impression that you are reported to have said to the board on the 11th that the report you were talking about was in the presidency. If I'm wrong about that, my question might fall away. But if I'm correct about that, there might be a question of how it is possible that you could say that those are the documents we're talking about, which Mr. Masongani had at the meeting of the 8th, if you had said the report you were talking about was in the presidency.
Mr. Chairman, I did say that because, don't forget from my perspective, because this thing was entirely new, there were people who had documents there. And I took the view that these documents were part of documents which were in the hands of people in the presidency. They happened to be the hands of a particular individual at that time. And I understood that they themselves would have gotten those documents from the presidency, from somebody within the presidency. And so I was referring to the source of the documents. The fact that someone else had physically the document in their hand was not really the issue. I was really saying this is the source of the document.
Okay.
Yes.
Then there is the question of when exactly the meeting that you talked about involving yourself, Ms. Brown, and Mr. Essa and Tony Gupta took place. Your counsel also referred to quoted paragraphs from your affidavits where you seem to say there was toing and froing between, or chopping between yourself and the minister in relation to the composition of the board committees until she called you to a meeting and said the composition that will be implemented was the one she had sent to you. That seemed to suggest to me that you may be mistaken in thinking that the meeting took place before the 26th of January. I don't know whether you have the same feeling, because when you say until, it's like after that meeting, the toing and froing and stopped because now she had put her foot down. But before that, there was exchange of different compositions between yours, or you kept on sending. In the end, it might not matter whether it was before or after the 26th of January, but I thought I must just raise that again, whether in your own mind, you seem quite clear that it was before the 26th of January, or whether it could be that it was after.
Chairman, it was before the 26th of January. Don't forget also, if you recall some of the evidence from other board members, that they were already operating in subcommittees in January. So this
it was
business,
before.
yes, would have had to have been clarified to a large extent.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay.
We've come to the end.
Nothing arising. Huh?
No,
No.
Mr. Tsotsi just opens another can of worms after the other.
Mr. Ngqeberha?
Chairperson, certainly for me, I probably was oversimplistic. I thought the point was made. Maybe if you indulge me just on this last point arising from your comment.
Okay, all right. Maybe you can do it from there.
Yes. Mr. Tsotsi, now the back and forth between yourself and the minister, at what point does that happen? If you were to give proposed dates, because we know that the 16th of December 2014, you receive from Essa, you pass on to the minister.
Chair, this would have occurred shortly after I had received the response from the minister,
Okay.
right? After I'd passed on what Salim Essa had sent me. She came back and said, this is okay. Then following that, that would have been post the 16th. So it would be sometime between the 16th and, let's say, maybe the first week or so of January. Yeah,
Now-
that would have been the sort of time frame.
Yeah. Maybe before you proceed, Mr. Ngqeberha, let me just interpose this question. You see, the letter, the email that I read to you from the minister of the 28th of January, which we all thought must have been a response to the composition you sent to her on the 26th of January. If you read that email, she seems not to be responding to the composition you sent her in substance. She seemed to be saying, you sent it in a wrong way. You must send it under cover of some letter. And then she sets out a number of items. She says, you must send it together with all of those requirements. Now, if she had already, prior to that, said to you, you shall implement my composition, there may be some tension there, because she seems to be, in that email, to be saying, I will consider your composition, but after you have done the following, put it under cover of a certain letter, and also give me the following things. She sets out 6 things. Now, if your version, on your version that prior to the 26th of January, she had already said, implement my composition and nothing else, it seems that that might not be consistent with the tone of her email of the 28th, where she seems to be entertaining and not rejecting your composition, but saying, bring it under cover of another letter and include the following other things. But you might say, look, I'm clear in my mind it was before, or you might say, look, maybe it was after. In the end, it might not matter. I was just thinking you might be able, it might jog your memory.
Chairman, what I said is that the meeting of the minister where the 2 gentlemen were present, Salim Essa and Tony Gupta, as really the culmination of what the minister wanted. And that was as far as she was concerned, putting a foot down, as you say, this is what's going to happen, right? Now, that meeting occurs before the 26th. So on the 26th, I sent to her, in essence, what she says is the culmination of what should be done. Save for the fact that I insisted on taking myself out of the IFC. She accepted that insistence on my part, but the rest of the composition is same as what Salim Essa sent me on the 26th, notwithstanding my iterations that I sent to her in the interim between the 16th of December and the date on which she put her foot down in the presence of the Gupta. So what she was asking for on the 28th is just a formalization of what I had sent her on the 26th, in a format which she can use in her reporting, in a format she can use in the what was called the shareholders meeting with the board. So it is just a formalization on her part to say, I want this composition you've sent me on the 26th, put it and include the following things.
Okay, Mr. Ngubesha, you had asked for one question. I gave you, but you might have the last one.
The last one is that, put differently, this is the proposition I put to you, which you need to correct me if I'm reading you well. The 26th correspondence becomes the culmination of your conceding that all the changes you had suggested were rejected, save for you taking yourself out, A, B, that the response by her on the 28th simply suggests that now that I am satisfied that you are doing what I want and not what you had proposed, now you can formally put it in this format.
Chairman, I wish I could have put it that way, but that's precisely the situation.
Thank you very much.
Well, you pay him for that. But let me ask the question. Your composition of the 26th,
Yes.
because Mr. Selegas Jr. we haven't had the final version of what she's preparing. Excuse me. Your composition of the 26th that you sent to her, to the minister, was it the same as the composition she sent to you, except that your name was no longer in the Investment and Finance Committee?
Answer is yes, Chairman.
Okay, all right. Now, in your affidavit, in the paragraph that your counsel read, you seem to suggest that you intended making changes to the 16th December composition, but you have only talked about removing your name. Does that mean you decided not to make any other changes that you may have thought you would make?
Yes, one change I recall making was to take Mtwaita Mabuda and out of as chairperson of ARC and put Mark Pomensky. Because Mtwaita, though she is a financial person, at the time I don't think she was a CA. And I made the point in my statement that ordinarily that position is occupied by someone who's a CA. So Mark Pomensky being a CA, I put his name there. So that's one of the changes I recall. Some others I could have made on the basis of the CVs of the board members when I looked at them, which is what was guiding me in terms of the allocation.
So is the position therefore that the composition of the committees of the board that was finally implemented was, one, not exactly the same as the one that the minister sent to you? Two, one difference was that you had taken your name out of the Investment and Finance Committee, but that was not the only change you made. You also made some changes relating to Mr. Mabute and Mr. Pomensky.
Miss Mabude.
Or is it Miss? I'm sorry, Miss Mabute. But are you saying there could be other changes that you don't remember?
There could have been other changes, Chair, that I might have proposed, but I don't recall, quite honestly.
So from what you are now saying it looks like there may have been substantial changes to the composition that she sent you that you effected.
No.
Yeah, first you said one, your name. Now you've said also Ms. Mabute, but you have said there could be others. That's why I'm saying it looks like it could be substantial, because the committee members were not many in any committee.
Yes.
It was about 4 or 5 people most of the time, isn't it?
So let me put it another way. The minister rejected every change I made, save for my exclusion of myself from the IFC. That is...
Well, if that is so, then you must be back to your version, which is the composition of the committees that was ultimately implemented was the same as the composition that the minister sent to you, except that your name no longer appeared under Investment and Finance Committee.
That was what ultimately happened.
Yes, but are you saying in between, before you reached that point, you had suggested other changes, including Ms. Mabute and Mr. Pamensky?
Correct.
But that was rejected.
Correct.
And you are saying there may have been others that you can't remember, other changes, but whatever other changes you suggested were rejected by the minister. And the only one she accepted was your removing yourself from the Investment and Finance Committee.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I thought the last question which was asked turned everything, turned everything around. That last question, Mr. Tsotsi, said to you, does it mean that your email of the 26th to the minister, which email is your revised list? You were simply saying to the minister, okay, now that you've asked me to do the changes, here is your changes, and the minister responds and say, okay, formalize it. You know, follow these formalities in submitting it to me. But earlier, that's not how we understood you to be saying. We understood you to be saying, the email of the 26th of January 2015 contained your own list.
Yes, yes. I had understood him like that.
Yes.
Too.
No, maybe, Chairperson, if you
Yes,
allow
sorry.
me.
Yes, Mr. Ngabesh.
To complete what actually happened, Mr. Tsotsi said there are missing exchanges of emails, which is where these changes were in. And the only ones he sees now are the 16th of December, 2014, and the 26th and the 28th of January. That's where the gap is. That's what warranted this clarity.
Look, in the end, it may not or may not matter a lot, but at this stage one doesn't know whether it will end up being material or not. But the one thing that we know you have said now, Mr. Tsotsi, is the ultimate composition of the board committees that was implemented was the same as the one the minister sent to you, except in one respect. That one respect is that your name was no longer in the Investment and Finance Committee.
That's correct.
That's what you say.
Yes.
Okay, and we ought to have somewhere a document that can prove what the ultimate composition of the committees was, I would imagine. Yeah. It should be somewhere.
Yeah, that we should have.
Yeah.
Yes, we will certainly have that.
Yeah.
Yes. So we will incorporate it in that comparative table.
Yeah.
So we can see the evolution of the changes and the ultimate data. So we have.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tsotsi. I didn't think that we would, you only finished now, but that is what has happened, and matters needed to be clarified. Some have been clarified. maybe others need further clarification, but thank you very much. I will now excuse you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Silika must think that I have a very high entertainment value. That's why he keeps me here for so long.
Sorry, just repeat.
I'm just saying, I think the reason why I stay here for so long is because Mr. Silika thinks I have a very high entertainment value. So he likes for me to be around. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsotsi. Mr. Nabesha, you are also excused. I know you would like to be excused. Some of us are going to continue into the evening session. Okay, I think we'll take an adjournment, Mr. Sileka. We are at 4:30. Of 15 minutes, will that be enough to?
I had the same in mind, Chair.
Yeah, 15 minutes, and then Ms. Daniels can be connected.
Yes.
Okay, we adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.